Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 29 of Radio Europa. We've got a lot to get through tonight, and I'm joined by Laura, Darren, Darth, and Boris. Hey, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hiya.
Hi, so tonight we're going to discuss the incredibly distressing news that BuzzFeed's going down the pan. I'm sure we're all very sad about that. Then we have the latest migrant dramas from Portugal to discuss, and we might get on to Facebook blocking political ads as well. So it's a meaty show tonight. Before all that, however, I'm going to hand over to Laura, who's going to briefly cover the news of the week. So Laura, over to you.
Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome to our 2-year anniversary episode. So we're going to start doing a new thing at the start of our podcast episodes, and we're just going to cover the news very, very quickly. So it's going to be like 3 or 4 minutes of just an overview of the news from across Europe. Obviously we can't fit every single story into that, but it's kind of difficult to stay on top of certain events like Brexit and the yellow vests and stuff, so we thought we'd correlate it all into a quick presentation for you. So the Gilets jaunes, or the yellow vests over in France, are still continuing, currently been going for 11 weeks, and protesters are being seriously injured by riot police who are using flashball weapons. So there's been a high number of serious injuries, including people who have lost eyes and even their hands. And there have now been 11 deaths in total and thousands of injuries. There's a new counter-protest movement called the Red Scarves, and thousands of French protesters have gathered to protest against the quote-unquote violent and disruption, which they attribute to the 3 months of anti-government demonstrations. French President Emmanuel Macron, his approval rating is actually improving slightly, so he's now at around 27%. Brexit, we're no further forward, so we're supposed to be leaving at the end of March, and then a transition period kicks in until December 2020. However, it's looking at the moment like that leave date is going to be extended, just basically because we have a weak leader in a parliament full of traitors. But the main problem is the Irish backstop. So obviously leavers are saying that May's backstop causes us to still have ties to EU rules, so lots of people are arguing about that, but no further forward with Brexit really. Other news from this week, it was Holocaust Memorial Day on Sunday, it was, which is kind of interesting because I could have swore that it was Holocaust Memorial Day last month, but apparently we have a different one almost every month because different countries have a different Holocaust Memorial Day. So we get to celebrate, the memory of those people every single month. But there was a survey done by the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, which found that 1 in 20 adults do not believe that the Holocaust took place, and 1 in 12 believe that the scale has been exaggerated. And then a final note just to say that the European Parliament elections are expected to be held on the 23rd to the 26th of May 2019. And that's all from me.
There's a lot been going on for sure. I mean, especially I think it's interesting, the Holocaust Memorial stuff, because like you said, it seems to be every other day in Europe. Every other day there's some never again hashtag going around. So yeah, it's been an interesting news week. So I think we should probably get straight into this BuzzFeed topic, because this is kind of funny. You know, it's a light-hearted topic for us because we can laugh at these people. So I don't know who's looked at it the most. Darth, you've normally got a pretty good analysis on these things. So just tell us what's happened with BuzzFeed this week.
So in the States, BuzzFeed decided to lay off a bunch of their staff as well. I think it was up to 15% of their staff, and Huffington Post did the same. This has sparked all of the BuzzFeed and Huffington Post employees who were laid off are so-called journalists. That's to use the word richly, because a lot of them were no more than glorified bloggers. With putting out opinion articles. So they were posting on Twitter about how they'd lost their job and how the work that they'd built up had come to an end. And obviously this didn't get a lot of sympathy from a lot of Twitter, because in 2017 a load of coal miners were laid off in the States, and a bunch of the mainstream media had put out articles saying, oh, you know, if you're laid off, you're laid out of working in the coal mines, you know, you could learn to code, you know, blue collar job, you can turn into a white collar professional and learn to code and get in with the movement of technology. So this, along with BuzzFeed's incessant fake news and rubbish articles, which I'm sure we'll cover in a few minutes, that have questionable clickbait headlines, people were very amusingly commenting on these journalists by saying, learn to code, you've lost your job, learn to code. And it became a hashtag trending on Twitter. However, people didn't take too kindly to be told the same thing which they were telling other people last year. So safe to say, not very many people are feeling very sympathetic for these journalists.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the whole thing about this is that it's so good to see them get a taste of their own medicine. And I mean, they produce crap. Let's face it, the opinion writers. I've just did a quick Google search, and I mean, these are some legitimate headlines from BuzzFeed. So there's one, 23 ass-eating tips from people who have seen some shit. 17 tweets only people who have licked a butthole will understand. 22 objects people have actually lost in their ass. I mean, come on, this shit's a joke. Like, this isn't journalism. This is just a joke. I mean, I don't know, Boris. What's the funniest BuzzFeed headline you can find, or Darren as well? Bring you on this. Have you guys found any really funny headlines?
Well, I found a gem, and I'd like to read out a few bits of it. It's called 33 Things That Almost All White People Are Guilty of Doing. Interesting. Let's see. So one that I just found really funny here is white people love to use the bathroom before leaving a restaurant and coming out checking their hands dry, saying, ready to rock and roll? Yeah, we like to wash our hands after a meal because we like to be hygienic. What a shocker. I mean, these kind of clickbait, crappy style articles, it's incredible that they get away with it. And yeah, really, learn to code.
They should indeed learn to code. But I mean, some of those articles are a total joke. Like, you know, there was one that was something like 25 reasons why white people were in 2018. And then it's ironic that they write this stuff and they publish to a white audience, a majority white audience, and they wonder why they're running out of money because, you know, they're like doing some anti-white populism in white countries. Darren, I'll bring you in on this. Welcome back to the show after a few weeks off. What do you think about this BuzzFeed thing?
I think it's hilarious because, on a side note, BuzzFeed wrote some damning article about a friend of mine. I won't mention them, of course. So they have got that side to them. But as Riots was saying, the stupidest stuff is what are their lists, like 17 foods that white people have ruined, written by a white person. 20 reasons why white people can't be trusted, written by a white person. And then one that's come out today is, you know, BuzzFeed are famous for their crap quizzes.
Mm.
They've written a very bitter quiz aimed at employees or ex-BuzzFeed employees. So how many years have you worked at BuzzFeed? Less than 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. I remember when our holiday bonus was a drawing of a cat. It's just subtle digs at BuzzFeed. But on the plus side, apparently anyone can make a BuzzFeed quiz and have it published on there.
Well, we could certainly have some fun with that. I mean, if anybody in the audience wants to go and try and sneak a funny quiz onto BuzzFeed, then go ahead, because that'd be a good laugh.
Ask how many people were killed during the Holocaust, that kind of thing.
Well, there's definitely an idea there. You know, if audience members want to run with it, then, you know, that would...
Not condoning that, but do what you want.
Just an idea. Laura, I'm going to come back to you on BuzzFeed. I mean, we often joke in private chats and stuff about basically just how ridiculous these people are, but it's a good feeling, isn't it, to see that these people are getting, you know, the market is rejecting their shit.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, let me know if my connection's dodgy because everyone sounds really jumpy to me, so I think it might be my connection. But I did find one article called 10 Signs That Your Cat is a Wizard, which was written by a man. I mean, imagine dating a guy that writes an article called 10 Signs That Your Cat is a Wizard. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. I feel absolutely no sympathy for them at all. And these are the kinds of people who are fine with the doxing and targeted harassment of children. In fact, they facilitate it. So I'm glad that this company is failing and these people are losing their jobs. And a lot of our guys this week have been posting two tweets by the same person, one saying I've been fired or laid off by BuzzFeed, and then one saying, you know, like stuff about the Covington Catholic School and stuff, you know, like really bad stuff about Nick Sandman. So these are the kind of people that were saying that, you know, his information should be out there and his house should be burned down. And some of them were even saying that he should be killed and stuff. So, you know, I honestly feel no sympathy for them at all. And I think that the fact that they're being victims on social media and expecting people to feel sorry for them after the way that they've spoken about white children, not just children, but lots of white people, I just think it's absolutely disgusting. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. But according to CNN, a total of around 1,000 jobs have been lost in the media industry since last Monday. And it's not just BuzzFeed, it's organisations like the Huffington Post as well. So yeah, but it's come at a good time because it's our 2-year anniversary and we're growing like quite rapidly. So we have 5 editors now. We had 2 this time last year, and we've got writers in more countries than we ever have had. So I do really feel like alternative media is being successful, and then these crappy, you know, why do we hate white people article writers, they're all struggling. So it's turning in the right direction at last.
I think.
Yeah, sorry,
mate. I was just gonna pick up on what Laura was saying. I was doing a wee bit of kind of research the other day, and I think one of the reasons why these companies, other than what we've discussed, are going down the tubes is they have had a huge amount of people investing in them, you know, stupidly large amounts of money. And, you know, they've hired all these people to pump out all this rubbish, but they've not grown organically. So they've had all this money invested in them at the start, and then they've not made that money back with the news they've been putting out. So they've then went, oh crap, we've got all these employees and we can't afford to pay them because we're not making back the money which was invested in us. Whereas you said you've got the alternative media, you've got, you know, YouTube channels who have grown slowly but surely over the years and are expanding, and people are becoming more and more interested in what they have to say because they report proper stuff. They're growing organically and they're needing to hire folk, whereas these guys have had all this money put into them and they're not making any money back off it.
And just to jump in, because I saw a very interesting statistic on Twitter just today. So there was a very big YouTuber, some in the millions of subscribers, and an interesting statistic, because it seems that some big media outlets attacked him, and I won't mention his name because he's irrelevant to our topics, but he said that his videos pull in more viewers in 1 month than, say, a CNN or Washington Post in a year. So look at the scale of that, and yeah, just that just illustrates how they're failing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm don't get me wrong, I'm no big free market man, but it is interesting to see how market forces are pushing these people to the sidelines. You know, BuzzFeed, like Darth said, they had an initial capital investment, which actually they're not seeing any returns on it, so they're cutting their opinion writers because they've concluded that nobody gives a shit about their opinions. And you know, you've got bigger companies like CNN and in the UK Sky News and whatnot, who I don't think they'll fail because they're pretty big. You know, they've got a lot of capital and whatever, but they will have to they'll have to make a choice between either we fold, which they won't do, or we tone down the liberal bullshit narratives because we're being found out and nobody likes it. I mean, and as well, just to add to that, you never see Breitbart talking about laying off staff. They're only ever hiring. You never see any of the other alternative media sites, even stuff like RT and Sputnik. They're never laying staff off, even though they're sanctioned by like the whole world. but people listen to them because they present an alternative narrative. So I do think it is interesting to watch how the market forces are doing this. I don't know if I'm happy to move on, but has anybody got anything else they want to add to this BuzzFeed debate? I mean, I'm happy to gloat as well because it's hilarious. But if you've got anything to add,
one thing, I just wanted to give it a bit of a philosophical spin to explain why BuzzFeed was, why we white people, why we accepted, for want of a better word, BuzzFeed for so long. It's because we, as a civilization, we're very introspective. When we do something, we write stories about it. We poems, stories, legends, everything. We think about our actions. Even today, after both world wars, we still have huge debates about it. And there was that centenary recently, and yeah, we like to be introspective to check what we did wrong so we can improve on that. And since we have a tradition of that, we have turned it into not a joke, but something to be able to have humor with, And so BuzzFeed basically perverted that. And because we're used to it, because it's part of our culture and nature, really, we kind of took it on the cheek, we accepted it, and sort of in good humor. But it's good to finally see them blowing up, because those articles, man, they're atrocious.
They really are, but I think you're onto something there, because especially in the Anglo-Saxon world, I mean, I say that loosely, but I'm talking about the UK and America. There is quite a sense of self-deprecation. We have a self-deprecating humor, especially in the UK, and I think BuzzFeed is like the manifestation of that in journalism, but they take it way too far. Like, we take the piss out of ourselves as a bit of fun, but BuzzFeed actually mount a concerted attack on white people, and they take it too far. And I think they think they're being edgy and self-deprecating, carrying on the tradition, but they're actually just being journalists. And that's why everybody hates journalism, because they're lying bastards and they just print nonsense.
Exactly. Completely agree.
The best bit is when they're called out, and you're finding this more and more with these extreme left media sources, is when they get called out, for example, with Covington, they double down, so they're proven again and again and again to be wrong, or to have made a huge mistake, and they double down. It's not, we're sorry, or we made a mistake, here's actually what happened. It's not, we still believe this. It doesn't matter what you say, we still believe this, and this is what we're going to stand by.
Yeah, there's no self-awareness is in that process, is there? So even though when people don't like it, they don't take stock and think, oh, well, maybe we need to look at it. By the way, everybody who's watching on YouTube, take a look at the graphic on the screen at the moment. It's a very funny cartoon, and the last picture here on the screen at the moment is epitomizes the depth that BuzzFeed writers have sunk to, and I'm very pleased to show it. I think I wish that was the case for all of their writers. But anyway, I think we've gloated enough about BuzzFeed now. So, and it was good fun to get out of the way. I'm glad we did that, and I think our audience will be pleased for that too. Moving on, I think we're going to talk about Portugal now, and some things that have been going on there. Some rioting, some criminality. Boris, I know you co-authored an article with a Portuguese guy who works with us on this topic, so you're probably best placed to fill us in. What's been going on in Portugal?
Yay! Right, now some time for our Iberian news, finally, Portugal specifically. Well, so what's been going on there, it's quite atrocious, and we covered it in a bit of depth on the website. There's 3 articles out about it. And the whole story started from Friday to Sunday. That's when sort of the core of it happened last week. And it escalated throughout the whole of last week, so during the workdays. So throughout the whole week, last week, in Portugal, in Lisbon, and its surrounding sort of boroughs and neighborhoods, there have been Africans who have been rioting. And why are they rioting? So basically a fight started in one of the boroughs called the Jamaica neighborhood, and it was a fight between Africans. So the reasons are still unclear. We don't know why they were fighting, but there was a sort of small scale violence, about 20 of them, a bit more. And so the PSP, Public Safety Police of Portugal, of Lisbon, they came to break up that fight. And while they were trying to break it up, the Africans attacked them, naturally, because that's what you do. They attacked them, and when the police defended themselves, because a video of the whole thing was recorded, of course, by Africans, then they plastered it all over social media. And now, basically, not the whole immigrant community, but a huge chunk of it in Portugal is calling the police, who came there with the intention of calming down the protest, of fixing it, of stopping it, and they defended themselves. Everyone is calling the police racist, bigots, blah blah blah, all the pronouns, you know. And the Africans, after the weekend riots, they've been rioting for the whole week. They've burned cars. They set police cars, about 2 or 3 of them, on fire. They set bins on fire. They threw stones at police. It's incredible. It's incredible. And Portuguese media has been all over it. It's a huge topic in Portugal, also in Spain. But the interesting thing about it is that there's basically an MSM blackout on it. Where have you read this on MSM? Nowhere. I haven't seen an article about it almost anywhere, and I follow the MSM because that's what we do. That's what we're in the business of. So yeah, that's basically what's been happening there.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible looking at what's going on there, because you know, you kind of tend to think that this narrative about Africa being the victim and nasty colonial whatever, it tends to be a Western European thing, like France and the UK. But of course, Portugal has that history too, and they're victim to the same narratives. I mean, just quickly, has that been something that's come up in the Portuguese media? Do you know that are they trying to say about the empire and Brazil and slaves and all that kind of thing?
Oh yes, exactly. There's I don't remember exactly where he's from, but some immigrant, some African, who is the founder of an anti-racism organization, anti-racism NGO. So get this, he's the founder of an anti-racism NGO called SOS Racism. He's also a spokesperson for some leftist party in Portugal. And on social media, he's been, these are his words. He called the police's pieces of shit. Self-awareness level 10,000. But he did that, and then the whole week he's been calling them out, calling the police out when they were just doing their job. And the media, of course, has been taking it inside mostly.
Yeah, it must be difficult being a policeman in that environment where you're basically hamstrung, because you know, what do you do? Do you let yourself be attacked by Africans, or do you do your job and uphold the law and then get vilified by a bunch of degenerate communists? I mean, it must be a difficult position. I don't know if anybody else has got any thoughts on this topic about that.
It is. It's a very difficult position, and I would just like to add, in Portugal, it's a bit of a different situation to the UK, let's say, because in Portugal the police mostly support sort of our viewpoints. They see what's happening, and it's a different situation to the UK, where the police seem to be on the side of the powers that be. So just to put that out there.
Yeah, I mean that is something to think about. I know that policemen, I mean, it depends where you go, I guess, because some police have had a what would you say, like an additional education. I mean, there was that case in the UK recently about that dude who he got a phone call from a police officer who gave him a talking to for liking a mean song about transgender people. I mean, so it depends where you go, I guess. But it's good to hear that the police over in Portugal at least have a more rational view on these things. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on this issue who's had a look at it. over the last week, because there's obviously quite a lot going on there.
I've noticed on Reuters' website they have mentioned the Portugal protest, but they've classed them as unidentified attackers who threw petrol bombs rather than saying what they are. And then later on, an unidentified witness who recorded it said that they didn't throw stones. There was no one throwing stones when the police turned up. It's all lies.
Man, so you got some counter narratives going on in there. I mean, they talk about misinformation from our side.
It's counter narratives, but it's complete lies, because in our articles, I mean, me and our Portuguese correspondent Peral, we were able to find pictures of the event, and there's a journalist photo taken of an African being put into a police van by police. So, I mean, lies.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of misinformation from the Liberal side on this, and I tend to still have faith in the principle that the truth will always come to the surface eventually, regardless of how long it takes. So hopefully that I mean, ordinary Portuguese people can see through the misinformation and recognise what's really going on here, because I think that's very important for the future they do. Before we carry on this topic or another topic, I just want to say thanks to everybody who keeps listening every week, because we're getting our subscribers up and the viewing hours up, and it's going really well. If you do want to donate and contribute to help us continue to do what we do, then we'd be very grateful if you did. No amount is too small, and the links are in the description below. Thank you in advance if you do. Darth, I just want to get your take on this Portugal thing before we move on, particularly, what's your take on the law and order? Because I know you and I have spoken about law and order before with Tommy Robinson and whatnot, but what's your take on it with Portugal, with these riots?
It's different. It seems to be different in every single country. For example, when you've had it in France, there seems to be a lot of kind of there's a media blackout, but it seems to get more coverage in France, I guess, because it's a more mainstream country. I think with Portugal being so close to a crossing, once Italy stopped taking in so many migrants, they started moving towards Spain and Portugal. And obviously Portugal hasn't had anywhere near the kind of migration movement into that into that country. So it's going to be, I would imagine, new to these people compared to places that have kind of been forced to take migrants for a long time. Like you said, I feel really bad for the police, because they're going to be caught between a rock and a hard place. And if these riots continue, they are going to be held out on the streets for longer and longer and longer, doing longer shifts. And ultimately, like in France, their patience is going to wear thin, because they're going to want to be with their families. They're going to want to try and keep their families safe. And they're having to continue to work to try and keep their streets safe. And, you see it time and time again when the police, get pushed right to the edge. They're more likely to do things which is going to get them a bad rep. So I wouldn't be surprised if this continues for a long time. You'll see kind of more calls of police brutality, because the police just reach the ragged edge and they end up taking their frustration out on the people who will most likely get them into trouble.
Yeah, I guess that is a problem, because, like you said, there is that dilemma for the police, but also they're human beings like anybody else. So, of course, when things start to get tough, then you start to see, understandably, unusual responses on occasion. It's still very rare, but of course you're going to get that in any line of work. So, yeah, I mean, I think definitely, the law and order authorities do have a tough job, especially in France and Portugal at the moment, and in the UK in some places as well, because there's problems here too. So yeah,
I think one final thing I would say on it is there's that kind of balance, that the balance of them trying to find things, because if you put it into Britain, if you imagine people like that were beginning to riot in London or one of the bigger cities, you know, you would have people immediately calling probably for martial law or some kind of, you know, strict control over what people can and can't do. But it's this kind of thing of, you know, people end up sacrificing their freedom to hopefully, you know, sustain law and order. And once that narrative is set, the government are oftentimes very reluctant to let it go back, especially when people are becoming more and more anti-establishment, anti-government, pushing back against this globalist agenda. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if the police are forced to, by the government, you know, take a more authoritarian stance against both migrants and the domestic populations of European countries.
Well, this is part of the problem, isn't it? Because what you tend to see is that the bad behavior of one particular group has a knock-on effect to the rest of us, because we all have to suffer under the new strict laws, even though the people that they're actually inconveniencing tend to be law-abiding citizens like ourselves. But speaking of repression, it kind of leads nicely onto the next topic, because, of course, repression in terms of law and order, sacrificing freedoms to maintain law and order, but also...
Oh, yeah, sorry. I have to jump in to say this. Just one thing about people thinking about immigrants and integration, and just to dispel that bloody myth of integration. So these African immigrants who are rioting for almost 1.5 weeks now, they are immigrants who have been in Portugal from between 10 to 15 years. They immigrated legally. So those are the kinds of migrants that the left are always talking about. It's like, oh, it's going to be the rainbow. These people are going to integrate. They're going to be awesome, and it's going to be diverse, and it's going to be beautiful. No, it's not. This is what happens. And these are the kinds that integrate.
Yeah, I mean, that is a fair point. That it would be interesting to know, so how many of these people rioting were in Portugal legally? I would suspect probably most of them, because I wouldn't have thought they would get too much illegal immigration, because you obviously have to go through Spain and from the African continent. Yeah, as I was saying before, I think the whole repression angle is important, because one of the other topics that we're going to talk about now is Facebook censorship, which all ties in, because as we know, Facebook are in cahoots with European governments and America to repress political opinions that criticize this agenda. So, Laura, I'm going to bring you back in on this, because you've been quiet for a while. What's going on with Facebook and the censorship? Do you know much about what's going on there?
Hello. Sorry, I had myself muted. Yeah, I know a little about it. I mean, there's not much news about it, actually. We wrote an article, and Breitbart wrote an article, and I think somebody said before the live stream started that The Guardian have written one as well, but obviously that won't be truthful. So not many people are covering the story, but it's basically about Mark Zuckerberg starting a war room in Dublin with the intention of allegedly protecting the integrity of elections. And obviously, as I said earlier, it's the European Parliament elections coming up towards the end of May. So I think Darren and Darth have a little bit more information than I do, but he basically wants to kick out users who misbehave. I mean, I don't know what misbehave means. I guess it means if you don't toe the liberal line. He wants to reduce fake news, but he gets to decide what fake news is, and he wants to increase transparency. So translating to knowing the names and faces of who pays out for political ads. And that's kind of where we are, really. It's just about Facebook deciding what's truthful and what isn't, and then deciding on what they're going to crack down on and not let the public see, obviously, in the run-up to the European Parliament elections.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite worrying, to be fair, because you know what it means in practice. It has nothing to do with information. What it means in practice is that sites like ours we are going to get blacklisted as like some Russian fake news shit, even though we don't have a single Russian contributor. So that's probably what's going to happen. Darren, Laura said you had some information on this as well. Have you got anything to add on this, on the detail of this issue?
And he's gone.
I don't think he knows he's got his microphone muted.
Oh, there we go.
Welcome back.
Hi, Darren.
I was chatting away then to myself. So this all came from an hour-long speech that Head of Global Communications Nick Clegg made. They're going to trial it with the Ukrainian and Indian elections before the EU one, and then the Israel one as well. So, as Laura was saying, it's where people can click on the adverts that we'd see during any election. People then see how much was paid for it, who put it up there, and then it's going to be kept for 7 years. This has all come about, as we know, because people are crying over the referendum result, how it was paid for. And again, with the Trump election and the Brazilian one as well, where Facebook went on the offensive to get rid of anything that's pro-Bolsonaro. It just seems like an excuse to stop populism happening again. And that everyone's blaming, it's because of the adverts that Leave won, it's because of the adverts that Trump won, when they're failing to realise it's what people wanted regardless of the adverts. But we'll see how badly it affects us and others similar to us.
Yeah, but the hubris of this action is remarkable, because what they're basically saying by implication is that whenever we lose an election, then the problem must be that the opponent is cheating. It can't be because we just lost. It's because the opponent is cheating. It's like there was a case at one of the Olympic Games or it might have been a Commonwealth. No, it was an Olympic Games a few years ago, where the French accused the British cycling team of having little mini motors in their bikes, because they couldn't understand why we kept winning. And it's like that with this. The liberal establishment cannot understand why people don't want to pay attention anymore. And it's just so arrogant. And I don't know what you guys think about this, but I hope that enough ordinary people will recognize the sheer arrogance of this and be able to identify what's going on accurately.
I think in Nick Clegg's speech, I've got the Guardian article here, and he's quoted as saying, so they're planning on setting up a so-called war room in Dublin. And
of all places.
I know. So he was quoted as saying, Operations Centre focused on elections integrity based in Dublin this spring. The centre will build on the company's previous experience running a, quote, elections war room in its US office, where it coordinated efforts to police the platform during the US midterm and Brazilian presidential elections. And what that says to me is like you said, William, they're worried about countries which are leaning towards the right side of the political spectrum, and they don't like it. So let's clamp down on what news is being broadcast so that we can try and stem the flow of people voting for the opposite side. Oh, and by the way, I don't know whether many people are aware of this. It seems to have kind of slipped under the radar. Facebook, whilst we're talking about them, is also planning on merging 3 of its messenger services. So it's going to be WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook messengers apparently they're planning on merging these. Now, one thing that jumps out to me is that WhatsApp is known to be end-to-end encryption on all of its messages, whereas the other 2 are not. So that, along with this, kind of makes me concerned that people are going to lose that security that they have when they're talking about anything that people may not like when it comes to political discussion.
Well, that's interesting, because when Bolsonaro got elected, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the charges against him was that the opposition made up this crap that his campaign had used WhatsApp to spread disinformation. What the reality was, of course, that they'd managed to use WhatsApp effectively to get information out there that the mainstream media wasn't publishing. I mean, do you think that move is part of it, that they're going to look at actually getting really into WhatsApp and saying, no, you can't send this stuff?
Well, I mean, WhatsApp obviously was a very, very popular messenger service when they bought it over. And one of the things that obviously people liked about it was the end-to-end encryption. Because let's be honest, regardless of whether you're doing something that you should or shouldn't be doing, it's nice to know that what you are sending to your friends, your family, your loved one isn't being snooped on by somebody. And potentially, that could mean if that end-to-end encryption disappears, people are going to be much less likely to talk about things which may be considered wrongthink. And I think that definitely could pose a problem for people, especially when I think WhatsApp's now the largest messenger service in the world.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. And I mean, a lot of people, the Liberals always say when they're in power, like, oh, well, what if you've got nothing to hide, then you won't mind if there's no encryption. But I'd love to say to these people, okay, well, give me your phone and let me look through your messages. And they'll always say no. And the point about it is that, privacy is privacy, whether you're doing anything wrong or not. And that's important to a lot of people. Boris, were you going to jump in on this topic?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just wanted to say that, the moment that WhatsApp was bought by Facebook, it was compromised. So they may say that they have end-to-end encryption, but they are owned by Facebook, so we can't trust that. And, well, yeah, just that.
Yeah, I think an important point to take from this is that, I wouldn't rely on WhatsApp for secure communications anymore, whether you're doing anything wrong or not. Just if you value your privacy, it might be worth looking at alternatives. Telegram is a good alternative, and as yet, it hasn't been bent to the will of the authorities. So, if you want to just talk about personal stuff, then I'd use Telegram. I wouldn't trust the traditional avenues. Laura, I don't know what you think about this issue, because obviously we're in the business of getting information to people, and if Facebook becomes impossible to do that, to spread our message, what would you recommend to people like us and others who want to spread information as an alternative to reach the same number of people?
Well, it's true that you can't rely on other social media platforms, because we get suspended from Facebook all the time, and then we always appeal it, and then they always reinstate the account. So it's clear that they're trying to get rid of us from Facebook. We've survived on Twitter so far. We got banned from YouTube on a different account that we had that was something else, but the podcast seems okay. So yeah, I mean, we have the Telegram newsfeed, don't we? So Telegram does seem a little bit more secure, but I'm not sure really. I mean, building your own platform, Daily Storm have managed to stay up, don't they? I know that they've got much kind of more expert techie guys that kind of specialize in that field, but I think building your own platform is possibly the way forward. But I don't really trust anything. I use Telegram. I don't have Facebook, because I just think it's so weird having all that personal information about you out there. And I don't use LinkedIn or anything like that. I just have Twitter. So I think for organisations like us, because the mainstream narrative are trying to shut us down, and they probably will do it at some point, I think we need to be relying on our own technology, really.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I can see some people are joining this debate in the chat, and one person's asked us if we see Gab as a viable alternative. I mean, my personal opinion on Gab is that it's fine, but because you're not going to get banned, people lose their inhibitions. And especially in the UK or in other European countries where there's a lot of hate speech laws, people tend to get a bit carried away, go overboard, but they forget that just because Gab won't ban you, it doesn't mean you're not going to get arrested. So Gab is interesting, but it's a bit of an echo chamber, and still be careful what you say. I don't know what if you guys want to add anything on Gab. Anybody? Any takers?
Well, basically, just to reiterate your point, because when it first came out, everybody, we went for it because, it's the alternative to Twitter. You can say whatever you want on there. But basically, you're very right. What I saw happening was it would just get spammed by Wignats and all sorts of types, and there would basically be no filter because, yay, it's the no filter site. So people would get carried away. They'd say incriminating stuff. They'd say They'd say all kinds of things, and then these things would end up as screenshots on Twitter, posted by opposition, and yeah, a lot of people got into trouble because of that. So yeah, Twitter, Gab is there, and it's growing quite fast, and the website has improved a lot. But you know, be careful. Just keep a cool head.
Yeah, I think that's definitely. I think you've identified a key problem with Gab there. Is it does attract the crazies, like the Wignats, the proper, like the neo-Nazis who are literally the Hollywood depiction of neo-Nazis do tend to congregate there. So it's maybe not the most sensible place to spread new ideas. I think somebody in the chat has asked if the Yellow Vests are a legit movement. Well, I have an opinion on that, but I don't want to listen to my own voice all night. So I don't know. Does anybody want to say what they think about the Yellow Vest legitimacy as a protest movement?
Well, I'll jump in, and then we'll let the others speak, and then you can close with your controversial opinions. But well, I've been trying to cover the Yellow Vest movement, and there's articles on the website about every sort of act every Saturday that they do their thing. But well, to kind of wrap up what they've been doing, last Saturday there was a sort of split in the movement, and basically there's sort of three big factions now. There's the Yellow Vest proper, they would be a sort of anti-government movement who want to, well, sort of populist, you know, they want more power to the people, that kind of thing, a more direct democracy, yeah. Then there's the chunk of them that have formed a political party, which is called the Citizens Initiative Rally. And that caused quite a stir between them because they started as grassroots apolitical thing. And now a lot of them are going for politics. So you can see how that's a sort of conflict of interest. But those that are going for politics, they are doing that, or they say they're doing that because they want to create real change. And that's why you do politics. And now sort of the newest development is these Red Scarves who, well, we don't know much about them yet because they're sort of the newest splinter group. And we don't know much about the Citizens Initiative Rally either because they haven't been clear on what their policies will be. Salvini from Italy has said that he is supportive of the Yellow Vests. People kind of take it the wrong way because Salvini has been in a feud with Macron, the French president, for a long time now. So he is saying that he's supportive of the Yellow Vest was more a jab to Macron than him really being all that for the Yellow Vests. But Salvini definitely is more closer to the people, and you just have to see sort of rallies wherein Salvini is there. People are cheering and hugging him and trying to get pictures and just thanking him all the time. And when you see a rally with Macron, people are just booing and throwing things at him, and there's security everywhere. So, yeah, with the Yellow Vests, where do I see them going? Well, it's hard to say. They've splintered. The most promising part of them is the political one right now, but we just don't know what they'll do for now.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex picture emerging there. And I mean, this Red Scarf thing, I hadn't even heard about this until tonight. So I'll look into it later. But I think you already have a problem when you're splintering off into different directions and then there's opposition groups. And I mean, I don't know if anybody else has got an opinion on that before we move on to another question. No, okay, I'm going to move on because nobody chimed in. So I'm going to go to another question from SPQR who said, will 2019 be a good year for the movement or more like 2018? Somewhat decent progress, but no real gains. Laura, any ideas on that one?
Yeah, I kind of think that it's going to be, I don't think that the world's going to be saved or Europe's going to be saved this year. I think what will happen is it will keep getting worse and worse and worse, and the white share of the population will keep getting smaller and smaller. And then I think once people become less comfortable, there will be some sort of fight back. So especially in Britain, where we don't really have any kind of sign of hope at all. We've got Theresa May at one side, Jeremy Corbyn at the other side. And then we've got UKIP, who are like civic nationalists who just cook out on so many issues. I just think that, I mean, there might be small gains here and there. Italy have done well, haven't they? They've kind of turned the country around in 2 years. Salvini's done great work over there, but I don't see a Salvini showing his face in Britain. So I'm in the camp that I think that people are just corrupted by comfort, and I think it's going to just get worse and worse, and then there'll be some sort of, civil war or some sort of fight back. But it's nice to celebrate the little achievements along the way, and I'm always happy when other European countries do well. Obviously, places like Hungary and Poland, Italy, as I mentioned, are doing well. We'll have to see what happens in France, because that's a very volatile country at the moment. Obviously, Germany as well, being in recession. We don't know what's going to happen with Merkel. I think it will be an interesting year. There's lots of, interesting stories that are bound to come out, but I don't think that Europe's going to be saved in 2019. I think it's going to be a very, very slow process to get what we want.
Yeah, I think the important point to reiterate there is that, this is a long game and it's a slog, and it's not something that one election or one election cycle or even 2 election cycles is going to fix. We've got the list of grievances. I mean, if you added up everybody's list of grievances, there's some of these things are never going to get fixed. So, but the ones that are will likely take a long time. So Jude McLean in the chat has asked, did you see Anne-Marie Waters on the BBC? I think they mean Anne-Marie Waters, just as Anne-Marie on the BBC, and what are our thoughts? Darren, Darth, did either of you see Anne-Marie on the BBC? Because I personally didn't.
I didn't either. I saw a brief clip of it where she was saying on BBC Sunday Morning Live, and she was saying how she wasn't a fascist, wasn't a bigot, and made a distinction between how she doesn't like Islam, but she respects decent Muslims. And then, unfortunately, the clip cut off, but from what I've heard, she got a lot of grief for it, and they had a Muslim woman on there to counteract what she was saying. It's what you'd expect from a mainstream chat show. And although, again, we saw the hypocrisy the other week where Anna Soubry was crying about being called a Nazi, so was Owen Jones. It has no mention of when there was the hustings back in May where Anne-Marie Waters couldn't even get in, and there was scores of lefties outside shouting racist and all sorts of other profanities, and the police did nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a recurring theme with anything people like Anne-Marie do in this country, that the media will selectively report what they say, and then they'll get attacked by the opposition. So I guess it's just sadly part and parcel. Pyramid Builder Jr. in the chat has asked, does Scandinavia, this is an interesting question actually, does Scandinavia need a less openly national socialist movement to gain traction with average Swedes, and I presume Norwegians and Danes as well, like just nationalists rather than NS? I guess the inference is that the what are they called, the Nordic resistance movement are maybe go a little overboard. I know they've been banned in, I think, Finland. And I mean, Scandinavia is an interesting place because Norway's government is fairly decent. So is Finland, but then, I say fairly decent and better than ours in Western Europe, but then Sweden's is totally cucked, and Denmark has got a pretty decent setup. So I don't know what you guys think about Scandinavia. I guess it mostly pertains to Sweden, doesn't it?
There was something that actually came out.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, mate. I was just very quickly, and then I'll let you go, Boris. There was something recently published, I think in the last kind of 24 hours, allegedly in Denmark. It is ending its integration for migrants. So as I understand it, for the record, this is an article that Peter Sweden published. I know obviously he gets a lot of hate on the Twitter sphere, but allegedly the term integration will be deleted from Danish law, instead using the term self-sufficiency, remigration program or introduction program, meaning basically that migrants that can go home will not be integrated into Denmark anymore. So I'm not really sure whether that's a positive or a negative. I don't know whether they're kind of saying, if you have no need to be here, then don't stay here. But I'm not really sure. It's kind of hard to tell, and I can't read the article because it's in a language that I don't speak.
Yeah, it's always tricky with these initiatives to see, well, do they actually mean something decent for us or not? So yeah, interesting thing to follow. Somebody with an awkward name in the chat, Jondon Johnwall, has asked, do you think the movement, in quote unquote, needs to accept that the Enlightenment has been a clusterfuck and it's time to adopt a new philosophy rather than this blood and soil atheist crap? No, is my short answer. But I don't know if anybody on our panel with a philosophical outlook would like to take that question on.
Well, that's a really big topic, but I guess what I would say in that sort of genre of thinking, I would say we should really focus less on the isms, on the ideologies, and we should focus more on looking at the past and looking at how capable and how good, moral, and decent so many of our ancestors were, recent ancestors and much more ancient ancestors, and we should try to emulate them. Really, it's about improving ourselves as individuals, really, because people. The problem with thinking about all these sort of big topics and reading the news all the time is that you get really distracted by it, and you think that by reading the news and being quote unquote in the know that you're affecting some sort of change, but you really aren't. You're just reading the news, you're just being distracted. It's good to be in the know, it's good to be red pilled, but you have to take action within your local community. That's here's an ism that I would use: localism. Try and affect change locally, within your family, within your with your friends, within your town. That's what I have to say there.
Yeah, I think maybe I did a disservice to the question by being so blunt at the beginning, but I didn't want to take the airtime myself. But I think I would add to that, if I was going to go into it in more detail, that I think one of the problems we've got is that you can't undo 300 to 400 years of, 300 years of Enlightenment thinking. It can't be undone, and there's a lot about it which is very attractive to people. And unless you try and start a revolution and impose a ruling elite that do something contrary to what the majority of people are comfortable with, it's not going to happen. People aren't going to vote for a pre-Enlightenment philosophy, and they're probably, not going to vote for a theocratic administration in any of our countries. Maybe in Eastern Europe, but not in the West. So I think one of the things that we have to do is be selective, pick and choose your battles, and where things can be changed to something more traditional and authentic, then that should be done. But there are certain things that you're just not going to be able to reverse, so there's no point trying. And you really do have to be quite selective in this. Just while we wait to see if we've got any more questions, I don't know if anybody else has got an opinion on that Enlightenment question, because it's a very good question, actually.
Any takers?
It doesn't matter if not, because we can wrap up soon anyway. But I just want to check in the chats to see if we've had any additional questions. Here we go. A white pill I want to send is that the entire Swedish countryside is still Swedish, and the newcomers only live in cities. That's positive and quite similar to the UK. Thoughts on archaeofuturism? I've read Archaeofuturism, Guillaume Fay's book. I don't know if any of you guys read Archaeofuturism.
I haven't read it yet. I have read Why We Fight, but I hear that Archaeofuturism wasn't quite as good as Why We Fight.
I would say that's correct. I don't think that. I mean, Archaeofuturism is good, but it's a bit. I think it comes back to advancing ideas that the majority are not going to go for, whereas Why We Fight is maybe a bit more pragmatic, and I think Why We Fight is a superior text in terms of political analysis.
Yeah, definitely. Why we fight. There was a funny thing once. After I read it, I really liked it. But when one of my friends read it, he said, basically, it's just a dictionary, you know. But that's, kind of the point. You have to be armed with quite a lot of useful knowledge that's within that book, and it's very interesting.
Well, that's what Why We Fight contains, is a meta-political dictionary, and it's, I mean, it sounds basic, but to be fair, it is important because the idea of it is to redefine the terms, change the rules of the game, and start playing on our terms, and that is an important thing to do. We've just had another question. This is about Brexit. Now, we weren't going to talk about Brexit, but we might as well just ask this question. I'll put it to Laura. Looks like Parliament just... this is by Tenebris Anima. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Looks like Parliament just rejected the no-deal option, but they can't agree on what plan to go with. What will they do? Now, there's been some votes in the House of Commons tonight, and I haven't seen the results because I've been doing this, and Laura, I don't expect you to have either. But just broadly, what do you think Parliament's going to do regarding Brexit?
I'm like the Brexit correspondent, aren't I, at DETV?
Yeah.
Well, nobody knows. That's the whole thing, because nobody likes Theresa May's deal. Obviously, they voted that down, but she's weak, and the EU obviously know that she's weak, and they have all the power, so they're not willing to budge on anything. So the only options really are no deal or her deal, if we're talking about deals. But obviously there's other options. I mean, she survived the no confidence vote, but I don't know if we're allowed to have another one. Perhaps she could be ousted. We could have a general election. And I think faith in the Tory party is very, very low at the moment. So God knows what will happen there. Imagine Diane Abbott being Home Secretary. We could have another referendum, obviously, and go back to the polls. They're talking about splitting the leave option. So it would be stay in the EU, no deal Brexit, Theresa May's deal Brexit, which is just completely wrong, because it means our vote is split in two. And with all the Project Fear and people saying, if we have a no deal Brexit, you're not going to be able to buy lettuce anymore, or you're not going to get your medication on time. People are scared of a no deal Brexit. So I honestly don't know what's going to happen. I think we'll probably extend the date of the 29th of March, which I gave earlier, which is when the leaving of the EU is supposed to kick in. I think that will probably get extended, and they'll just faff about for some more. Maybe Theresa May will end up standing down and somebody else will take over. But the honest answer is that, I haven't seen the vote tonight, so I'm not sure what's happened there. But I don't know what's going to happen. It's just a complete mess.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. I think the only thing Parliament can agree on is that it doesn't agree on anything. So we're in a tricky position where basically the parliamentarians have one opinion, the people have another opinion, and those two opinions conflict. So what happens next? It is going to be quite interesting to see. Tom, sorry, go on, Darren.
I was going to jump in and just kind of summarise what's happened. So they've rejected May's deal, naturally. They've rejected having no deal on the table, even though it's on the table anyway, but they've also rejected the power to stop no deal. So they are just looking to fanny about until the last minute. So they've said they don't want no deal. They've rejected it. They've rejected to stop no deal at the same time in a separate vote, which means that no deal is now the most likely outcome on the 29th of March, because nothing will happen before then.
But isn't it the case that these current motions going through Parliament, they don't actually have any legislative power? They're basically just motions.
Yeah, they've got none at all. So we're still going to leave with no deal.
Yeah, that's still the legal default, whether Parliament voices its concerns or not. I guess the important thing to stress to everybody is that the legal default in this scenario is no deal. I'm just going to go back to one more question from the chat. Let me just read through this before I say it out loud. Trudeau Tom, how does the political infrastructure need to be changed? Clearly, Parliament and liberalism and the making of authority and conscience has produced this mess. What should change institutionally? Well, another philosophical question. To a point. Does anybody have any suggestions on what needs to change in terms of political infrastructure?
In the UK, getting rid of first past the post would be the first start. and having it as a proportion to how many votes a particular party has got.
Yeah, I think that's important in the UK because you get ridiculous situations where a party can get 3 million votes and 1 seat, or 1 million votes and 50 seats. It is a bit stupid. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on political infrastructure.
Oh, here's a thought on political infrastructure. We need a monarchic, Catholic theocracy, and that will fix everything. Nah, just kidding.
Speaking like a true Croatian there.
Oh, you know me.
I think we might have to shelve the religious wars at Defend Europa for this week.
Well, that's no fun.
But yeah, I mean, one day we should actually do a chat like this where we have a debate on religion, because I mean, we tend to agree on a lot of things on the panel, but I think religion's one where there's quite a divergence in opinion between various people and factions within the organization. So we might do that one day and
a future topic, definitely.
Yeah, to have some sort of debate. I'm just going to see in the chat. Well, no, I think that's all in terms of questions. So we'll close that now. We're not going to take any more questions. But thanks to those who have submitted them, because they always make for interesting discussion. I think that's everything from us tonight. We've covered everything, so it's probably time to wrap up. Once again, I just want to thank everybody who's been listening in tonight and the weeks before. And if you'd like to contribute to help us to continue our project, then the links are in the description below. But for now, I think that's all from us. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, just wanted to say, check out Laura's and Poseidon's channel, because great content. Yeah.
Cheers, guys.